my mom kind of just looks at my dad and says, hey, it's time to tell the kids. And we're like, what is she going to say? And then my dad just basically says, hey, I've been cheating on your mom for the majority of our marriage. I mean, that just disordered so many parts of my foundation, because all of a sudden I was like, well, what's real?
How did you bring trust into relationships? I know a thing that you talk about a lot is like creating a healthy environment in home, being healthy yourself, right?
Why do you want to deal with the stuff that's hidden right now, men and women? There could be a day when you just it becomes normal and it kills you. If you don't create an ecosystem of forgiveness in your home, you will never know or fully be able to deal with all the pain that comes into a home and a relationship on a daily basis.
Life is wild. Faith, marriage, parenting, work, all of it. 1 minute you're inspired, the next you're in chaos. That's why I started No Longer Nomads, the podcast that throws you into the deep end of real stories and authentic truth. We're talking ex-witches who found freedom, former Muslims who met Jesus, mountaineers who even survived the wilderness for 6 days, and much, much more. No Longer Nomads, because no one was meant to wander alone. What's up, everyone? Welcome to this episode of No Longer Nomads. I'm your host, Josh Doyle. We got a good one today. We got Brook Mosser on the show. He's with Intentional. It's an incredible ministry that helps families, helps men grow in their faith. And we talk about his book, Sowing a Hidden Seed, which is daily prayers for your child's spiritual growth. And it's chocked full of good stuff: anxiety, broken relationships, spiritual wisdom, and just ways you can pray for them. And it was an awesome conversation. It was hopeful. It was honest. It was raw. And I learned a ton from it. I know you will too. It's going to make me want to become a better husband, father, and actually give me some tools. It's super practical. And a couple things before we get into that: definitely go to the website. You can sign up for the newsletter. We're sending out stuff on shirts, on events we're wanting to do down the road. And we got a surprise launch coming in September we're pretty fired up about. And always, it helps if you give us a review. A 5-star review helps a ton. If you like the content, pass it on to a friend. Word of mouth helps us grow. So here is the conversation with Brook. Well, man, welcome to the show. And I'm so glad we had this worked this time. This is attempt 3. And so I'm so glad it worked out, man. And big fan of what you guys are doing. Obviously, what you're just talking about with the Intentional Fatherhood podcast. I'm a huge fan of that, which I'm a branding graphic nerd. Great branding around that.
Dude, hey, let me just pause. Thank you for saying that, because that is a huge part of my world. And I have a guy that I work with directly, and him and I do most of the projects that I'm passionate about. There's a guy, I don't know if I'm not a graphic designer in the sense that I sit down and know every program. I know enough to be dangerous, but I do have a lot of strong opinions. And that project literally we had one designer that I was going to work with, and I was pumped to work with it. And then it just wasn't clicking. It was not, It just didn't come together in a way that we were hoping. And so I called my guy. I was like, dude, listen, this is due in a week. Do we want to can you even attempt this? Do you want to do this with me? And he's like, bet. And so that was a very fun last minute 9th, 12th hour, whatever the thing is, project. And thank you, because it's actually something that is very meaningful to me.
Dude, it's so good. I'm a nerd the same way. I can't draw, but all the artwork, everything in here, I'm like, hey, I want it this, like that. It's all,
you can see it.
Nerdy graphic design stuff I love. Anyways, hopefully other people see that too. Love to go back to what we were talking about before, just fatherhood and leading with vulnerability. And I think when you stepped into your role, you didn't step into it going, I have this figured out. And that resonates with so many people. And it does with me. That's why I love, listen to what you guys put out. Also, you got to hit your book as well on the front here. I want to hit that as well. So tell us about yourself, man, and we'll get into it.
Yeah. So I lead something called Intentional, which is a nonprofit that is all about spiritual formation in the family. And so we primarily highlight marriage, parenting, fatherhood, and motherhood as our focuses. And every family has relationships. So we really talk about the way of Jesus and being formed in the way of Jesus individually, as a couple, as parents, as fathers, as mothers. We create resources around that. We have different podcasts. One of them is the Intentional Fatherhood podcast, which you're mentioning, which Justin Whitmell Early and I do together. And then we also do, my wife and I actually host the Intentional parents podcast, and that is more in the arena of parenting, marriage, and life as a whole. And that's a really fun one to do. My in-laws will step in on that one once in a while, Phil and Diane Comer, which is fun. And honestly, those resources are fun to make. And then we also do conferences. We do events, rather we call them retreats, because getting away and retreating either as a couple or as a mother or as a father is hyper essential in your success as a growing human and as an individual. And so we create these moments throughout the country at weekends to get away and to have curated moments to rest, to be refreshed, to be poured into, to be equipped, to have time, to have fun. Fun's really important in the spiritual journey. I think so many people miss that. And then to go back and have more vision, more purpose, more clarity, more understanding of what you're trying to do. And we get to do that. Again, like I said, we do multiple events for mothers, for fathers, and for marriages all around the country each year. So that is what I do. And before this, I was a pastor for almost 18 years. And this was not in my world of like, I did the pastor thing. I want to do the nonprofit thing. That was not on my agenda. This has all happened very haphazardly. And then lastly, I am married to Elizabeth. We've been married for almost 20 years, going to marriage therapy literally directly after this. So if you're like, oh, these people got it figured out. We don't. I'm literally going to counseling right after this. And then we have 4 kids, 1 boy and 3 girls. Duke is 17. Scarlett is 14, Birdie is 10, and Sloan is 8. That's our crew in a nutshell. We live in Bend, Oregon. There you go.
Well, tell us about your book too. I love it. It's Sowing a Hidden Seed. Tell us about the heart behind it. Definitely, folks, you should check it out. Definitely pick it up. I mean, when I started praying this for my kids, I started seeing so many different ways that I was equipped to pray. And I can go into that in a minute. But yeah, tell us like why you wanted to write it and where that came from.
You want a funny story? Do you like funny stories? Do you like stupid stories?
I love funny stories, yes.
This is a stupid, funny story. So you're holding a product, a book, which is a beautiful, fun thing. And the design element was really important to me, as we kind of mentioned as even an aside, but it was because I wanted people to feel like they could leave it out, because visual cues are so much a part of the problem when it comes to most things that we really want to make important. Just like if you have a TV in the center of your room, of your living room, and you're like, I don't want my kids to watch TV. They have a wonderful visual cue at all times of the day of what they're missing out on. So just by removing a visual cue like a TV or adding something like a book reminds you of the things you want to prioritize. So I wanted to find something that we could leave out. But that's like getting to the end. The before of this is, I remember I had a trip. I was speaking somewhere in Florida. I live on the East Coast. And so I knew I had about a 5-hour flight to Florida. And I had this thought probably 2-3 years ago. I was like, man, it would be good to do some sort of like prayer devotional for parents, but like something that was super easy, because I don't have time to read a book. I mean, I do make space because that's part of my work and I do enjoy it. But like even if it's a part of my work, I've really got to set aside time. And so I thought, what if we did something like that? But again, I didn't talk to anybody about this. This just came into my head. I was flying with my son, and I knew because we were going to be on a plane, he'd be binging movies hard, which I was like, that's fine. Planes are a great place to do that. Oh, yeah. So I knew we weren't going to be having like bro time outside of like when the drinks or food came and, we'd talk for a minute. So in all honesty, I was like, I'm just going to try to write a day. I'm just going to see like if I picked a verse and I picked a quote. I had like this long document of quotes. I didn't use ChatGPT, although I could have. That would have been probably smart, but had a long list of notes and then had a prayer and wrote a prayer. And I just tried to write one day. And that's what this book is. It's not a book to read through. It is literally a 31-day prayer devotional. And each day is on a topic like, and it's for your kids, like anxiety in your kids or sexual purity for your kids. And it's a topic, it's a verse, a biblical verse. It's a quote from someone who's way smarter. And then it's maybe a 200-word prayer for your kids. It's just to give you language to pray for your kids. And so I did one day. I was like, that wasn't that crazy. And essentially it went from there, where it was like, by the time I landed, I had written 10 days. And then while there, I just had extra time. I wrote another 10 days, and then I wrote the most of it on the way back. And so over the weekend, I had found that like, whoa, not only was there like this moment where I really felt like the Spirit just kind of descend or just give something to me that I didn't expect, but also it was amazing how simple the process was, at least compared to how much I thought it would be just this weird challenge. And so it honestly started as a thought. And then I was on a plane and I was like, I guess I'll try. And then it turned into this thing that you now hold, and honestly has surprised all of us. I mean, to an extent that there's a lot of fun projects coming from this, but it's still bonkers. And we did it in-house on purpose because we're like, this is something that I'm not going to wait on a publishing deal to do because it will take years to get out. I want to just get this in people's hands. And so you can get it at intentionalfatherhood.org, or intentionalparents.org is the only place to get it right now. But even with that, which I thought would be a massive barrier, it has not stopped anyone from getting it. And even the book orders, we're continually ordering. We're having all the problems of like, well, where can we ship in the country? And we ship it from our crew ships it. So we have different spots around the country. And like, even just figuring out the logistics of trying to get this in people's hands has been just a beautiful problem, but nonetheless, like a strategic frustration.
That's so cool. Dude, for me,
it's just to say, it's just, it's been a surprise to all of us, myself the most.
I love that. I was just saying, for me, I was looking, where do I get this? Checking on Amazon. I think I went to your Instagram, looking for links there, and then finally found it. I was like, let's go. And what I did, and I don't know, like if you get much feedback on it, but I started praying the same prayer all throughout the day, and then I would kind of like space it out. I'd do that same prayer for a couple of days, go find another one, or I'd see like something my kid's doing in school where he's a little more anxious, and I'd go to that one and I'd camp out there for a few days. And I'm telling you, man, just a way to feel equipped. My wife loved it, to be able to pray these prayers too during school. And then, like new seasons, new transitions, we're going into school, we're going into summer and now to a new school. It's just like, we're equipped to pray in so many different ways, man. It's a fantastic resource. And so thanks for putting it out, man.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Thank you for using it. The point was to give, people a blessing, not a burden. And it really only takes 1 minute. If you read through the whole thing, it is 1 minute. We clocked them all at, maybe the worst, if there's a little winded prayer, it's 1 minute and 5 seconds. So time can't be your excuse, but I find, and what you said is really true, I think it actually slows people down to know that they could accomplish the task of getting through the day. But what I love about it is that they actually can sit on it and like meditate on it, because the scripture's meant to do that. It's like, and I love for me, like the one verse is, I'd rather chew on a verse for days than just try to read through copious passages and kind of understand broadly, but not get into my heart. And so, it was the most surprise to me. So grateful. Thank you for that. It's very kind. And it's a fun resource. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, tell us about, intentional and your childhood and maybe like how, I think we were starting to do this on the last one we were starting to record, but how you got into what you're doing. At the beginning we were talking about, you didn't feel like you came into this and as like, hey, I got all the answers, but leading with vulnerability. And so tell us, upbringing, did that shape you into, your position now? I'd love to hear kind of your background.
Well, I grew up, I was born in 1985. So I am 40 this year. I was 40 this last year. And man, I grew up in a time where I was Christian home, like Christian nominally, not necessarily always in the sense of how we lived our life, but it was like, we went to church, we did a lot of the nominal Christian things, but there was a lot of intense things going on in my house. There was a lot of things that I would have clocked as just like normal stuff that was honestly really intense. And now I would understand as abuse and different things that I would have quickly just kind of said, oh, it's not that big of a deal, but like realizing, no, that's not everyone's situation. And so, grew up in a lot of chaos, a lot of emotional chaos that I had no clue of until kind of getting out of my family in the sense of adult, becoming an adult. And I think it's to be said and has to be honoring, like my parents came from terrible backgrounds, terrible abuse of all sorts, physical, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, all the abuses that you can almost clock. They both had various versions of that growing up.
Yeah.
And so there was no way that these two people were going to meet each other and then all of a sudden not pass any of that on, like even with their best efforts. And honestly, they did a lot better with my brother and my sister and I than they had. But nonetheless, it was still a lot of pain. And so I grew up in a home that I would have probably reframed as normal, but upon realizing what other people's experiences were, it's like that wasn't normal. And so upon growing up, there was a lot of things in my story that I wasn't really privy to in my family's life. And this kind of culminated in one night. I was 17 years old and my parents called a family meeting. And that was really weird for our family. That wasn't our family culture. So that was bizarre and just kind of like, okay, that's interesting. So we go to this family meeting at home and my mom kind of just looks at my dad and says, "Hey, it's time to tell the kids." And we're like, what is she going to say? Like, what's happening? And then my dad just basically says, "Hey, I've been cheating on your mom for the majority of our marriage, but it hasn't been with women, it's been with men. And I've been gay my whole life. And I've been living this, secondary double life type thing." And, come to find out at that moment, like he had truly lived and had like a bunch of different relationships, long-term relationships, things that we just didn't even know were happening. And as a kid, and even at 17, you're still a kid, getting close to adulthood. I mean, that just disordered so many parts of my foundation because all of a sudden I was like, well, what's real?
Yeah.
Well, is Jesus real? Is our family real? Like everything that you thought you knew was all of a sudden upside down and honestly different. And it was really hard to have to process through a lot of that. And so I started playing music. I played drums. And so I got into the music industry by some random happenstance and started touring with different musicians around during that time, which took me out of my, what was that?
What kind of music?
All sorts. Christian, it was in the Christian scene for a while.
Okay.
And so that was a big part of my life. So it took me out of the actual like day-to-day pain of my home and put me in a different place, which was really helpful. And at the very same time, I had already met my now wife. I met her when I was 17, actually. But at that point, she had broken up with me because her words were like, "I could never see myself marrying someone like you." And that was fair. That was very fair at the time. 17-year-old dysfunctional me was not the person you wanted to marry. And so I go like on the road and we had this relationship. But at the very same time, I always came back to a pretty dysfunctional home, but her parents had recently started a church in Portland. And that church became like my life and community. I started reading the scriptures every day. And Jesus just became to me what my parents and my father never could.
Yeah.
And like being satisfied by God alone in that situation and learning what that meant and learning what an ongoing relationship with Jesus, like all that happened then. And so that got to a spot where I realized like, dude, I am not called to do music full time. It's cool, but like you can barely make enough money. And unless you're writing songs and on the road all the time, you're not making enough money to make sense. At that time, that just wasn't the model. And so I was like, man, I got to do something else. And it was just a funny pivot. Like I remember going to the beach one day. I was like, I'm going to fast like half the day. Like it was a big deal. Like, God, I'm going to fast today. I'm going to skip breakfast and lunch. And I go to the beach and I'm like, I don't even know how to do this because I'd never been shown, but I'm like opening my Bible and I'm like, what should I do? I don't even know how to like even ask, but I'm like sitting on a rock and there's like the water and, there's sand and there's all the elements there. And I don't know, man, I just had this nudge of like, maybe I'm supposed to do ministry. And when I got back, my brother-in-law, who had also helped start the church that we were in, said, I think you should like teach middle school this week. And I was like, that sounds like the dumbest idea ever. I've never even like talked in front of people. He's like, I think you should do it. I don't know why I said yes. I just said yes. And this entered into this weird world of all of a sudden I find myself in, ministry at a very young age. I was like 20 and found myself in full-time ministry pretty soon after. And in the pastoral world, which again feels really weird. This is a very long-winded way to tell you that I came from dysfunction and pain, stepped into pastoring, which feels absolutely asinine and crazy to think that I, in my brokenness, would be called to help other people, which again, I think is actually the biblical model. Like God uses the most broken people in many ways to help other people. Yeah. And I think it was because like I was so unaware of my brokenness that God really could use my unawareness of a lot of it to hopefully bring good. But that led to this place of where I'm at today. I help families as a job, as a life. And I cannot tell you how much I do not feel like the person that has the masterclass on this. I don't feel like the person that should be doing this. I don't feel like I should be the person sitting on this podcast right now, helping anybody, because I didn't grow up with a stellar situation. And every ounce of my like fatherhood that is good has had to been fought for, prayed through, I mean, there's so much therapy, countless amounts of just understanding what my own dysregulation does and moving through the world. So I come to this place today, just saying, and I'll let you move on to another question, but I come to this place and my story is I don't know why I'm here in the sense of helping families. I don't feel qualified.
Yeah.
I feel very much like God is gracious to use me. I'm honored to do it, thankful to do it, but I am in the same boat as you or any other man or any other father who's like has to deal with all of your life and struggles and still be a present husband and present father and serve my God well.
Thanks for the rundown. Wow. I had no idea about your background and upbringing there. And thanks for sharing that, man. Like,
Yeah,
so
surprise,
how,
surprise.
yeah, surprise. How did
But
that shape you though? Like, how did you bring trust into relationships? How do you then, like, I know a thing that you talk about a lot is like being healthy yourself, right? And like creating a healthy environment in home and knowing some of your weaknesses and it's okay to be flawed, but like making repairs with your kids and things like was this stuff that you saw at all growing up or from other families? But kind of a few questions in there, but also like how did you carry trust over into your
Mhm.
marriage and parenting?
Well, I have to say, most men that I meet, and I would love to hear if any of the thoughts you have on this, but
Yeah.
most men I meet and get to do any sort of life with, you're a great example. You're a good-willed man. You actually want to do good. Most men I meet want to do good. They just don't have models of what it looks like. And it's not that I have to convince you, Josh, that you should be an excellent husband, an excellent father. You want to be those things. You
Yeah.
want to be all the things that you can to be to your wife and to your kids. Most of the breakdown comes in what it looks like. Well, how much should I respond here? Am I being too passive or too active? Am I, what does a good nighttime routine with my kids in prayer look like? What's too much? What's too little? How present should I be to my wife's feelings? When do I have to say like, hey, we need to move on from these feelings and move to facts? Like
Yeah.
when is that not being insensitive? These are the types of
Right,
things we're
yes.
dealing with every single day.
Yes.
It's not because you don't want it. It's just because you don't know what it looks like. I would say for me to answer, that's a long way to say, my father-in-law, when everything kind of imploded with my family, I was already in their ecosystem and he is just like, if you'll meet him someday, I'm sure, but he's just a father to everybody. And he just gave me, without trying, just by being around him, he just gave me models of what it looked like to handle conflict and what it
Yeah.
looked like to be kind when your wife was wigging out and what it looked
Yeah.
like to be loving to your kids when they're not being lovable. And it wasn't perfect. And most of it wasn't like, I'm going to teach you now this thing, it wasn't
Yeah.
that. It was just osmosis. You're around it and you see it and you ingest it and you become it. And so for me, that was a lot of my personal way of how that actually happened. But then it was also having to unlearn. And I can't say this enough. If you are a person that came from an unhealthy family situation, the first thing you're going to have to get in touch with is humility, because man, it is one of the hardest things when you have a healthy spouse, and this is my situation,
Mm-hmm.
who could look at a situation and go, that's actually not the right way to handle it. And realizing that most of my natural knee-jerk reactions to a situation were actually pretty unhealthy, but I didn't know it. I had no context. Nobody was ever weighing it against, and so that's really challenging when you are in the position of having a spouse who's healthier. And that's just true. That happens sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's true. You have to humble yourself and go, crap, maybe I am not handling that right. And maybe my natural way isn't the best way. And that's just like a very tricky process. And it's a very messy process. So I think you first have to unlearn, and then it's learning. And some people can learn by just hearing their spouse. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it's really layered and you need help. And for me, it's looked like 10 plus years of active weekly therapy to understand, oh, I have a highly dysregulated nervous system. What does that even mean? What does that feel like in my body? When does that happen? Why does that happen? What do I do to solve it? These things take years to unlearn and to relearn. But I'll just give you hope. Like, man, I'm not to where I want to be, but I'm much further than I was a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. And everyone has to be honest about who they actually are, not just think or reflect and be like, well, this is who I want to be, therefore this is who I am right now. No, who you want to be and who you are often worlds apart. And it takes time to get to be that man, be that husband you want to be. And no wanting is going to get you there. You got to do the work.
Yeah, going into this, man, I thought I always wanted to be married, always wanted kids. And I thought, hey, I think I'll be decent at it. Like I was decent with relationships. I was never really super high one day, super low one day. It was just kind of, I thought, oh, I love people and I love, I love trying to figure out relationships and issues and conflict resolution, all that stuff. And then I got married and then I started having kids and I'm like, man, it makes me have so much more respect for my parents who were fantastic parents. Yes, they were not perfect. There's 6 of us and grew up in a pastor's home and like great. We all went buck wild, not because of them, but because of various circumstances and all that. That's for another podcast. Or we can get into that if you want to. But I'm telling you, man, I was going into this thing so jaded and that I thought that I had stuff together. And what I love what you said though, like it takes unlearning, right? Like habits and reactions. And so with your work, I'd be curious, what did that look like? And what does that look like for men that you're dealing with? Is it a humility? Is it a lack of pride that's like, hey, I can unlearn this? Or is it having to look in the mirror and go, all right, I got to be a better, because like you said, everyone kind of wants to be a better husband, better father. What does that look like for some of these people that you're dealing with? Someone's listening to the show right now, maybe going, how do I unlearn some of these behaviors if maybe I don't really know what I'm exhibiting out there? So.
Well, there's a couple things. One I'll say is if you want to know how people experience you, ask them, but be ready to receive and give them a space to be honest, because it's honestly the best gift for you. If you really do care for your development and formation, ask your wife, if you are married men, how are you experiencing me?
Oh, that's a great question.
Then shut up and take notes or open a voice memo or, record it and let her say it. Let her say that your response that you think isn't a big deal is actually a huge deal to her and it's causing a major, riff in your marriage. Let her be honest about when you're angry with her or the kids, it scares her. These are things that you don't like to hear. And why do I have such good reference? Because these are things I hear. Like these are things that I have to hear. And these are things that are so humiliating because that's not who I actually am and that's not who I want to be. But I am being those things. And to my kids and those closest to me, there's a part of me that is being that to them. And so I think that's one really big part. I'd say, how are you experiencing me? That's a great one. And then do your best to just listen. I'd say the other part is learning your story. Like so many men are hard on themselves for not being someplace, but they've never taken the honest look at their life to realize you're not in a certain place because other people didn't do what they were supposed to do to help you get there. Now, there's a flip side, backside weakness to where we blame. Our culture's doing this right now, and it's so demonic, man, where we basically write off parents because they didn't give us what we'd hoped for. They wronged us in this way, or they didn't set this up. And man, I just have to tell you, you got to be so careful with that. Yeah. Because be a parent for 10 seconds and realize you're just mitigating pain. You're just trying to do your best to not inflict copious amounts of pain on people. It is far more challenging than you realize.
So hard, man.
Far more complex. And so I think it's being gracious both to say, and I'll say this from my perspective, so and you can take this and put it in your situation. Here's the 2 things I can look at with my family. My family could not give me something that I know they wish they could have. I know my parents, if they had the tools, they would have given them. They love me. That's their heart as a parent. I can see that. I know that, and I honor them for that. Same time, same line of my story, they didn't give it to me. That sucked. That's really hard. And that has put me in a place where I've had to do more work, have had to learn more, have had to unlearn, have had to do stuff that I wish I wouldn't have had to do. And, I don't go on vacations. I spend money on therapy. That is what my life is right now. I wish I didn't have to do that. And I could like cancel them in the whole 9. Yeah. But I also think there's a win with understanding, like when you get in touch with your story, it's a lot easier to be a little more humble about your overreactions, underreactions, what you're dealing with, how you're trying to cope with stress, because your story will inform you of why you're doing a lot of the stuff that you're doing. Yeah. And when we take time to learn that story with a curiosity rather than a judgment, and that just simply means like you're not being, you should be doing this. Why aren't you getting a better job? Why aren't you more of a hard worker? What, like there's real things in your life and story that you might not even be aware of that are hindering you from moving forward in the ways you want to. And until you can uncover it, see it, you're not going to know what to do. So I'd say you got to learn your story is another part of it. And then lastly, one of my favorite phrases, although Willard is obviously all over the place in Christian world, but there's a phrase that that he uses that is always just so helpful to me in this. And it's his for sure. He's the one that wrote it. And it was grace is opposed to earning, not effort.
Mm.
Let me just say that a little differently because that's easy to go over our heads because they're words we know, but the way he said it is really important. Grace is opposed to earning. You don't earn grace. God has given you grace. You don't have to earn it. It's opposed to earning. You don't earn it. It's not opposed to effort. You actually do have to do something. You actually have to be a part of the solution of formation to Jesus in your life. It takes you moving through the world. It takes you making the choice to read the scriptures or pray for your kids like you're doing, Josh.
Yeah.
It takes the decision to say, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. I'm going to understand my story. I'm going to work through this. It is not grace is not opposed to earning, or it's opposed to earning, but not effort. And you have to put in the effort. You have to learn what's going on with you. And I mean, this is all over the scriptures, by the way. This is like a part of like knowing what's going on within us is a part of our responsibility before God and others. And so those are some of my responses. I have more, but yeah, that's where I'd start.
So I'm actually curious. So going back to when you were 17, your parents sat you down. What happened after that conversation? Did your family, break apart after that? I'd just be curious, kind of, maybe someone listening to is going, man, what was the fallout after that conversation?
It's a lot different than you expect. It was a lot different than you'd expect. So in a crazy turn of events, where do I go with this? How much do I share? In a crazy turn of events, my mom decided to stay with my dad.
Yeah.
They were going to get divorced. They decided to stay. Noble, yes. Dysfunctional, yes. They decided to stay. So that was their thing. And I don't know what I would have done. So this is again a grace that I would have towards my mom. Like, I don't know what I would have chosen. I've never been in that situation, but that's what you chose. So that is that. He continued to live a double lifestyle until he contracted HPV, and then he got anal cancer, and that was a pretty quick road. Cancer is so devastating, and so he died at about 56. He was 56, I believe, when he died. It was about 5 years ago now, and it was tragic, man. You start to realize like there's a moment. My dad's story always reminds me of a lot of things. One, that people can hold both terrible pain and beauty all at the same time.
Yeah.
My dad never had outlets to deal with what he had gone through and the distorted reality of his own pain and then his life and his decisions. Like, yes, I could judge for sure, but at the same time, he grew up in a really interesting time with a lot of pain, in a time where the church and people in general weren't really talking about this. And so he was so isolated in shame, and he really died in shame. Yeah. And so my family just kind of kept on the status quo of dysfunction from that moment on. My dad kept living this lifestyle, but we were told just to never to talk about it. Even telling you right now, I have this childhood part that's like, I can't tell you, Josh.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, no, that there's beauty in openness around what God's done and healed and doing. And so it hit all of us different. My brother got married. I went into ministry. My sister has her own story that I can't really share, but a lot of pain there for her in her journey. It just broke apart everything from that moment, honestly. And again, my parents stayed married, and I did what I think most people would have naturally done is, by God's grace, I married a woman who had a healthier situation. Yeah. And the ecosystem was something that I could get on board with. And it was something that I could see myself in, and it was actually connected to more who I naturally was. And so, I mean, unintentionally, and I think intentionally, we just started living our life more like I was exampled through her family, because it was like, oh, this makes sense to me. And so where it sits today, my mom is sweet. We don't talk very often, but when we do, it's sweet. I love her very much. But she's just recently, started on her own journey of healing, which has taken years to
Yeah.
get her to even, do
Yeah,
it.
of
I'm really proud
course.
of her, but like that's just started, which creates all sorts of other things. And the story ends in a really sad way. And it reminds me of the fact that there's a moment within our life and story where God gives us over to our desires to a point
Mm.
that even the consequence of those desires can end in death.
Yeah.
And that's just a scary, it shouldn't be scary. It should be sobering. It should be like, hey, why do you want to deal with the stuff that's hidden right now, men and women that are listening?
Yeah.
Well, because there could be a day when you just like, it becomes normal and it kills you and
Yeah.
it destroys your life in a way that you would never wish. And so, I mean, that's where the beauty of soul friends come in, relationships within friendship communities and all the stuff we can talk about. But yeah, from that point on, the family continued to distort because that's what happens.
Mhm.
And we all went our separate ways because we had
Yeah.
to survive. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what happened.
Man. Yeah, it's painful. And as you're saying, there's, hope in there too. And man, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. So as you're, building your own home and your own culture, I've heard you say, just like how important it is apologizing and repairing with your
Oh, yeah.
children, right? To
Mm.
have a home. And I'd love to talk about that a bit, just transitioning to the culture of the home. I come in from a different culture than my wife, and we bring in different ways that we want to parent, we want to teach. How would you, let's go there for a bit. Like another phrase I love to say, I love is like, you do pass on your nervous system, right?
Yeah, you do.
And so we also bring in that too. Like, how do
Yeah.
we set a good culture in our home? I'd be curious, with your story, like how you guys bring in different ways to parent and to love and to create a great home. And I'd love to go kind of there, culture of the home and camp there for a little bit.
Well, I mean, it just has to be stated, man. Like, we're all trying. So, trying doesn't mean perfection. Trying doesn't mean you're doing well all the time. So, let's just say that. So, if you yelled at your kids yesterday, there is grace, forgiveness, and beauty that can come from it. I would
Yeah.
encourage you work on that. Like, you don't want to create that home, but to think that trying means perfection, just get that disconnected really quick. The 80-20 rule is so helpful, especially when it comes to parenting, that if 80% of the time you are attempting to do these things, you're doing far better than most by a long shot. Nobody has the 100% dialed. So do not believe that lie. So, I mean, how do I know what to do? Well, it's first by knowing what not to do. I've learned
Yeah.
that, these ways are really bad. Responding to my kids this way, that doesn't work. That hurts their feelings. That's really troubling. Trying to yell them into bed because they won't listen, that doesn't work. So how do I know? Well, I know from doing it all wrong. So if you're wondering, like, how does he know that? Yeah, it's because I suck
Yeah.
at it and I've wanted to do better. So it's just like, note that. But I would say what I've learned is I love forgiveness. I love receiving it. Harder to give it, but I love giving it. But when you look at faith, let's just start there for a second. When you think about Jesus, when you think about life and faith, I'm imagining that's the perspective we're going to be talking to people from.
Yeah.
But if you have faith, or even if you don't, you can realize this, that the only way to deal with a lot of pain is through forgiveness. Now you can like test me on this. Go through all the different types of pain you experience. And honestly, repair is one of the only ways to deal with it. Just like forgiveness became the healing agent for you to have a relationship with God our Father, it is honestly the only thing that brings the kind of healing that your relationships need in the home to actually be healthy ever. If you don't create an ecosystem of forgiveness in your home, you will never know or fully be able to deal with all the pain that comes into a home and a relationship on a daily basis.
Mm.
Those little words that you say to your wife that aren't technically bad, but send a rift to her core because you're mad at her.
Yeah.
You got to find ways to deal with those things, because when you're angry, tired, overwhelmed, dysregulated, you say stuff you don't want to say. You do things you don't want to do. And if you don't find ways to deal with that, and I would argue it is repair, it is forgiveness, it's that whole thing. it will just build up to a point where your family becomes disoriented and distorted, a distorted version of what you'd hope. So how do you do that? I think it's not much more complicated than when you are wrong, you own it. And this looks like, I mean, the other night, let me just, so I have 4 kids. One of them has special needs and she's very easily dysregulated. And sometimes she drives me crazy, just as anyone in the special needs community, you can understand, like there's these moments where you're like, I have patience. I'm the best special needs parent around. And then your times are like, I freaking hate this. I can't deal. I'm overwhelmed. And honestly, all I need to do is just tap my wife and say, babe, can you take this? But like, I'm trying to be a hero in that moment. So I'm like, I've got this. And she is just losing her mind about something so minor. And, you know, you get to that spot where like, I shouldn't have to deal with this anymore. You should know better, you know? And all logic leaves. I'm like, of course she doesn't know better. So I'm doing all of the wrong things in that moment of, you know, basically treating her like she's neurotypical and saying, hey, if you don't stop, you're going to go to your room. Like these things that honestly, I know activate her more and aren't actually going to do anything, but I'm just mad. And so my wife steps in and she's like, hey, that's not how you want to be. And I'm so mad. I'm like, now I'm mad at you. Now I'm like, stop telling me what to do. Like, I know what I'm doing. You know, it's like, ugh. So once everyone, you know, calms down, I'm like, I need a break. She needs a break. Everyone calms down. My job in that moment was to freaking just eat crow again for the billionth time and just be like, first to my daughter, like, hey, Birdie, I'm really sorry. I know that you were feeling overwhelmed and I know that what I said wasn't helpful to you and I don't want to treat you that way. Will you please forgive me? Like, I am sorry. I don't want to hurt your feelings like that. And she's, you know, I was like, you know, how you forgive me? No, yes. You know, where are you at? And she's like, and she's really funny because when she's like, you know, frustrated, she just growls. So she's like, she kind of was like, and she's 10, by the way. So her growl's pretty intense. She growls and then she just goes, I forgive you. And I was like, I'll take it. Thanks, sweetie. And, you know,
I'll
probably
take that.
probably 5 minutes later, you know, she's okay. But then I had to go to the deeper thing, which was apologizing to my wife because in my dysregulation, I hurt her feelings and just being like, I know you're right, but I don't always know how to handle those moments. And I want to handle them better, but I didn't. And I'm sorry. And so it doesn't look much different than that. It's just when the infractions come, and they might be a lot some days.
Yeah.
Just own each one. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to take long. But I think even phrases that are really helpful if you want a script, I think phrases like, I'm sorry for, like, be specific. Don't sugarcoat the thing and say, I'm sorry for doing this, but you know, you shouldn't have, like, that's not owning it, guys. That's not owning it, ladies. Like, you don't say, well, because you did this, therefore I did this, which makes it like kind of your fault that you kind of had it coming. That's what we're sending as a message.
Right.
So it just has to be like, you own it. You ask for forgiveness. Another phrase that's really helpful is like, listen, you don't deserve to be treated that way. You really don't. You are a child of God. I didn't treat you the way you are.
That's a good one.
Treated. Yeah.
I've used that one before and it's good.
It's true. It helps people. It helps your kids see like, this isn't just like, I have to talk to God about this. I'm responsible for you. And so I think creating an ecosystem in your home, how you do that is simply by talking about it. And then just being a family. Like I would say, if you're the father or the mother, I mean, both can do this. And I think, men, that's really helpful coming from you. Like, hey, we're going to put the stake in the ground. We're a family that repairs. So we are welcome to have space, go on long walks, process, feel what you got to feel, say what you got to say. But when this is all said and done, we repair. We come back and we say, it doesn't have to take more than 10 seconds or 30 seconds. We sincerely, as much as we can, we say, hey, I'm going to own my part. Is there healing? Is there restitution here? You know, like, is there anything I need to do to make this up to you because of what happened or whatever? And so make that stake. And it creates a culture just by doing that on a consistent basis.
Brooke, thanks so much for coming on the show. This was so fun, man. I'm glad we can make it work this time. And before we go, where can people find more about you and what you're up to?
Oh, sure. Intentionalparents.org is a website. Intentionalfatherhood.org is another one. Social media, Brook Mosser, you can check that out, or all the intentional handles. Go check us out. The Intentional Parents Podcast, free to listen to, not free to make, by the way. If you remember the Intentional Fatherhood podcast as well, you can listen on it wherever you like. YouTube is another spot. So yeah, go check us out on all those things. But yeah, Josh, thanks for all you're doing. Thanks for the great conversation. You guys are doing great work, and just cheering you on. You're doing a great job.
Oh man, appreciate it. Thanks. And listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode. We release episodes on Tuesday, so come back next week. We'll have a great guest, and we'll see you next time.